Welcome, everybody. Today is close to the first-year anniversary of passing away of CJ Fearnley. And CJ Fearnley had a profound impact on all of us. He launched the series on collaborating for Comprehensivity. He did so many things and affected so many people. And today, what we're going to do, today's format is we're going to let everybody talk for a minute or so about what they have learned from CJ about comprehensivity. You can go up to 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes. Try to keep it within that, and we will go. Everybody gets to talk, and then you will have a chance to go seconds if you would like to add some more things after having listened to what everybody has to say. After we are done with that, we are going to talk about our series on CJ Fearnley's upcoming book, on the entire series of essays that he has produced. He has actually written the whole book. We are just going to put it together as a book, and we are going to do series of meetups on it, about 27 meetups, 2 hours each. So we'll be spending about 54 hours of discussion on these chapters, 1 meetup per each chapter. And it's all there on the meetup page, and we'll be going through that. But we're going to start with comments on, as people answering the question, what did you learn from CJ about comprehensivity? So go ahead and type an exclamation mark in chat or raise your hand in Zoom if you would like to speak. Okay, we're going to start with Joe, followed by Kirby. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on for quite a while about what I've learned from CJ. But while we were at the river and there were people, we had a little memorial, and there were individuals sharing their experience with CJ. One of them, Bob Miller, had gotten up and said, CJ built communities. And that's really, kind of what collaborating for comprehensivity is. It's a community of learners. He was part of so many, whether it be Math Counts or the BFI Institute, Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society, the Kenosis Project, all these other, he truly just embraced learning. He loved to learn. And so, his love for learning, it came out, it showed in the details of his write-ups. It showed in how he conducted himself at the meetups. But the thing that actually made CJ, I think, a comprehensivist is that he loved people even more. And I said this before, and I think that the important part is that that's what comprehensivity is all about, is that he saw the integrity of each individual, the importance of each individual's perspective. And integrating those perspectives is having a way of actually changing your own view of the world. So in a way, he was a role model. That's what, CJ taught me about comprehensivity is, he covered a wide variety of topics, whether it be Dante or 4,000 years of history of science. And we just look at the essays that he had written. And he really worked hard, and this is something else that I took from him, is communication. And I mentioned a little bit about the write-ups and things along those lines, but really one of the things that he focused on was suspending judgment and challenging our preconceived notions. And again, that is what it means to be a comprehensivist. You can't be a comprehensivist if you're only looking at the world from your own personal perspective. So, I mean, I think that this also, his humility is one other thing that I think made him what he was. He was highly skilled, always holding high level math discussions. And yet he would give everybody the same amount of time. And I think what he enabled us to be is more creative. Because when I say creative, having different people's perspectives allows you to do that. We live in a fragmented world. That's what modernity is. So the ability to have a comprehensive view of the world, respecting each other, this is something that's really lost today. Mutual respect for one another, listening to each other, active listening is essential for learning and for solving problems. And it also enables us to be adaptable because we're dealing with uncertainty in that process. So, CJ taught me a lot, but I would say his ability to build communities of learning, and his way of interacting with people in a respectful way, I think, and his humility is one of his lasting gifts to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I'll just make one comment about CJ. All of us have this experience of meeting a long lost friend, somebody who is very, very close to you for a very long time, and then you have not seen them for a long time, and then you meet them. CJ is one of the 2 or 3 people with whom I felt I had met a long lost friend when I saw him the first time, because there was so much commonality in this approach to comprehensivity that he has, of just embracing all of knowledge, all of people, all of culture. So thank you, Joe. Next up is going to be Kirby, followed by Jeannie. Kirby, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad I could make it. I really miss CJ. I don't have prepared remarks. I'll keep it short, just state somewhat autobiographically for the record, how I got to know him, which was kind of in the window between 1980, when I went to university in New Jersey, then I moved to Jersey City. So I was an East Coast guy for 5 years before I moved back to Portland, Oregon, which is where I'm at now. I've been here ever since with traveling, though. So I got to know him in those 5 years, and this was before he lived in Upper Darby, but he was already really into Bucky Fuller. And through him, I met a whole bunch of people. Like you say, he's really good at networking. And a lot of the people that I am still friends with today, I met thanks to CJ. Then also later, I'm a Quaker, right? So my North Pacific yearly meeting occasionally tapped me to be the one to represent them to the American Friends Service Committee, which is the social action arm of the Quakers based in Philadelphia. So they paid my airfare and hotel on at least 2 occasions that I remember. And when I wasn't busy in these long meetings that we'd have, I'd play hooky, I'd take off, and I'd go see CJ and hang out with him. I got to stay with him in his apartment a couple times, again, before this chapter in AFSC, back to the early chapter. I got to watch him form Synergeticists of the Northeast Corridor, which I thought was kind of an odd and quirky name, and he kind of thought that too. I think eventually it stood for something else, but that's what it started out as. And like Shrikant says, he's I like to argue with him. I like to spar with him. He was I was looking forward to many more years of using him as kind of a fun punching bag, but someone who fought back but he could argue about things no one else cared about. Like, what's the relevance of Wittgenstein Part 2, philosophical investigations? And we used to go back and forth, and I'm like, but you got to look at it this way. And he would come back with his, so he was like someone I could argue with earnestly because he'd done a lot of homework, the same kind of homework I'd done. So I felt like, yeah, this is a good friend. And I just kind of counted on him always being there. As I get older now, I'm 65. I realized that was an illusion all along. We're all going to be popping off here, but it's just a wake up call. So I learned that. And the other thing I learned from him is discipline. Like, he really locked into teaching himself, being an autodidact, and just having any number of courses like that he would take. Like, even before Udemy and these things became uber popular, we all learned online more and more. He was pioneering that whole space and lifestyle. And that would be another source of frustration, because I'd write to him and say, you got to watch this video. It's so totally what you're into. And he'd say, well, I'm saying this and that. And maybe next Tuesday at 4:00, I'll watch it. Or next month, I'll put it in my queue. And I'm like, damn it. I don't know if I want to be so disciplined that I can't change my schedule kind of at will. But I think I pay a price for being the way I am, just like he paid a price. We all pay a price for our habits, whatever. So I miss him a lot, and I wish he was here that we could keep tapping into his very bright and very active intellect. And I'm so glad that you guys have, in his wake, built this, like, you have really built an ongoing community that's very serious. I think we really do need this comprehensivity, this polymath stuff that you're into anyway. I think he's been so influential in ways I'll never fully appreciate, and therefore let me turn it over to others and let them hear. And hi, Jeannie, it's good to see others here. DW, so on.
Wonderful.
And Joe, hi, Joe. Anyway,
Thank
I'll
you.
stop. Yeah.
Thank you, Kirby. I'm delighted that you could make it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Next up is Jeannie. Jeannie, go ahead.
Thank everybody for being here. I want to put comprehensivity into a couple of contexts. Comprehensive anticipatory design science. This is an approach to solving humanity's problems that have spilt all over the world at this point. Comprehensivity allows openness and inclusivity. Anticipatory allows us to look at the future that we desire. Design is the human process of thinking, planning, creating, and critiquing. Science gives us a huge body of knowledge that mostly seems to work. So this process is not haphazard, but intentional change. Tools for comprehensivity are multiple working hypotheses, experimenting, building models, and realizing that we make mistakes. But it's collaborating for comprehensivity that is CJ's shining jewel. Getting people together, discussing and listening and working together. No one person can do it alone, and that's what he taught me. I'm so lucky I got to be with CJ. He often read to me. We studied math together, we danced, and we bicycled thousands of miles across the landscape where we lived together. One day, CJ woke up and decided to take responsibility for everything. It was fun, a thought experiment. It only lasted a couple weeks. But what we found out is that if you take responsibility for everything, you can take credit when things go right. And CJ deserves credit for his explorations into comprehensivity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. Right. There are many people. So next up is going to be Vanessa, followed by Bob, followed by Maritza. Give me just a second. Let me make sure. Go ahead, Vanessa, go ahead.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I got to say, when I first met CJ, it was a lot more informal. There was no title to it. I met him through the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society, and I believe at that time he was doing like a series. I came maybe midway through a Sapolsky, and I would say he did a really well thought out, write up. It could be like a little dissertation, but he was always polite and like intrigued by others, and occasionally a response make I don't want to say I catch him off guard per se, but you could see he was maybe intrigued by it. Maybe he had a little thing if it was something where, okay, it was, unless it was disrespectful, maybe even hoping that, like, okay, I've got another one, my mind is blown. And sometimes they would get to the point where it's more like a conversation, a casual conversation, where it wouldn't be so much asking a follow up question, but maybe they're for a little clarity or a better way to express it, or, maybe expounding upon and elaborating a bit. And he covered like vast topics. Occasionally there'd be one where it was like a kind of like an extra credit, or like when you have all right, let's just put something on the table today, and it may not seem related to others. And I do remember early, maybe midway through, he said you can check out my website. Now, whether I was overloaded from reading his write ups or the description or the talk or the little get together we had afterwards, I was like, oh my, this is quite, to use that word, comprehensive, very extensive. And so maybe in that things I realized, he was taking that farther, because at one point I kind of felt I led some of the meetups. I'm like, he never comes to mind. Then realizing the work he's doing that, and he's planning some of these 2 years ahead, like the gentleman spoke earlier, said, I'll put in my queue. And you never know what was going to come, what he was going to say, but definitely respectful and hoping to, like I said, get caught off guard. And I did go to one of his math counts meetups. I remember my mind was blown and this and that. I thought it was more like he already had the answer, was coming up just to maybe explore and explain, and just what was your thoughts about that? And this was like, I didn't know how. I was hoping someone would give me the inspiration so I could solve it.
Thank you.
So
Thank
like I
you very
said,
much.
and
Really
I'm glad he did collaborate with you guys to also do it, via 52 living ideas. Like I said, he's put a footprint for us to go forward.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate it. Next up is Bob. Bob, what did you learn about comprehensivity from CJ?
Well, I would say I learned that there is somebody who has had the same ambition that I have. About back in 2010, I wrote an essay on which I called 6 Tools for Understanding. I had a great desire to find a simple way to understand the world. And I see that this CJ, unfortunately, I did not have apparently the great opportunity of meeting him. So I just looking at his 27 in the table of contents there. And I'm really eager to see how much we will think alike. I have this. Pardon me.
You will have plenty of opportunity, because we're going to be doing meetups, 27 meetups, going through everything. And what I would recommend is that all of the material is right now there on the website. So if you could just click through, you can see that he has the essays, he has the videos that we have done. So please, we look forward to your participation. Thank you. Next up is going to be Maritza.
Hi, so I'm one of those who also met CJ through the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. I did prepare a write-up. I could not get it to a minute. 1 minute, 26 seconds.
Go ahead, take your time, go ahead.
I'd never heard of the terms comprehensivism, comprehensivity, or even polymathy until I met CJ. I used to describe myself as having an addictive personality concerning learning, because whenever a topic interested me, I felt the need to do a deep dive into the subject, researching and looking to learn as much about it as possible. It turns out my natural learning tendencies already had me living with a comprehensivity inclined mindset. The biggest and brightest thing I learned from CJ is that there's immense value to be found in collaborating and in collaborative endeavors. Learning, exploring, and seeking understanding are things best done within a group. I have always believed that it is vital to remember that we stand on the backs of our ancestors and that stronger individuals will create the stronger communities and culture we need to improve our world. I see all of this within the nature of comprehensivity as defined by CJ. With CJ's actions, thoughts, and words as my guidelines, I have learned that comprehensivity is a way of life, an embracing of the yes and, with a continual, iterative intent to not think in terms so limited as us versus them, this or that, either or, but instead to embrace a vast variety of perspectives and use them to aid in one's growth, and always remember that there's so much more out there that needs understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. And what Maritza is going to do is that in the 27 meetups that we are doing, she's going to have a recurring feature where she will take 3 of CJ's ideas and show connections between them. Kind of multiple perspectives is a very deep core idea of how CJ looks at everything. Even when you look at all the 27 essays that he wrote and the videos that he did, you can see him coming, leveraging diverse disciplines and coming at the same issue through multiple angles. So we're really looking forward to the exploration. Next up is going to be Jim Moberly, followed by Warren. Jim, go ahead.
Yes, hi, I'm Jeannie's brother, obvious from the name. One of the first times I met CJ, I heard him recite from memory the Robert Burns Ode to a Mouse in Scottish accent. I think all of you have heard him do, many of you have heard him do this. This made an impression on me that I think relates to comprehensivism, and that it implied the breadth of his learning. And by memorizing and reciting the poem with the Scottish accent, I think it showed an appreciation for depth, a depth of learning. And I had a similar experience in college. I took a poetry class and really was overwhelmed by the breadth. And so I chose a poem, and I decided to memorize it by heart, which the poem was The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is quite a long poem, and it took me quite a long time. But I do think CJ's appreciation for both depth and breadth of learning, which I saw many, many times repeated throughout my experience and with Jeannie and seeing him. I think this is a fundamental concept in comprehensivism. I mean, I think where he differed from, and maybe where he went right and I haven't succeeded, is that he shared that poem with many, many, many people, and I've never ever recited that poem, my poem, to anybody. But the other topic I had was, if I can add a few more seconds, is that one of the Meetup series deals with the role of story in our lives. And I watched over the years how Jeannie and CJ's life stories integrated in so many ways, with Jeannie kind of incorporating the geometry of Buckminster Fuller in her arts, but things like CJ adopting cycling and even giving up the automobile, which was very, very impressive. And I think CJ's willingness to adapt his life story over time reflected his love for Jeannie, and I think his comprehensivism as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'll make one comment, both connecting what you said and what Jeannie said. Jeannie said that collaborating for comprehensivity was his jewel, and you were also saying that he shared that poem with many people, and actually shared so much with so many people. What he shared so openly and so generously with people. And that's why we are all here, because so many of us got so much from what he did. Next up is going to be Warren. Warren, go ahead. Warren, if you could unmute yourself.
So a year has passed since CJ left, but just last week, CJ taught me something about Kissinger and civilization. CJ was the last person I knew who used a pencil to write notes. Yet because of the digital age, all of his emails to me remain for future learning. I have 2 decades of topics, such as vote for dean, or crisis of ignorance on energy, or what geometry do I need to teach my 8-year-old son before his first Bucky meeting. CJ's email essays were to entice collective thought, and yet he and I often continued them individually, back and forth, one-on-one. His essay on comprehensive learning sparked me to ask him to include entropy, to which CJ said, and I quote, "Entropy emphasizes the impossibility of being comprehensively comprehensive. Our challenge is to be adequately comprehensive." With groups, CJ might strive for comprehensivism, but with me as an individual, we could just be adequately comprehensive. So as I read Kissinger's obituary, the undergraduate thesis led me to Wikipedia, which led me to Kant, Toynbee, and then Oswald Spengler's The Decline of the West, which considers that when a culture develops into a civilization, it is actually already in decline. The arrogance of a civilization is inherently anti-comprehensivism, because a civilization thinks it is comprehensive. So as I continue to age past the days of CJ, I accept my limits of being adequately comprehensive, or even failing. It leaves me room for entropy and for thoughts outside the box. Through Kissinger, CJ has taught me a civilization must always recognize it is not comprehensive, that it actually has to always strive to become more civilized.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by Joe N, and then Doug. Joe, go ahead. Joe, can you unmute yourself?
There. Thank you very much. I give you a little bit of a background of how I came to know CJ. Just shortly after Buckminster Fuller passed away, I had moved to Philadelphia before that, about at the same time that not to Philly, but to New Jersey to teach, and at the college there in New Jersey, and so I kept in contact with Bucky during that time period. And shortly after Bucky died, Ed Applewhite and myself and some others were speaking together and going over a lot of the work that Ed did to help Bucky produce Synergetics book. And so at that particular time, there was a discussion that we should put a community together to try to do that. Well, at the same time, CJ was working with some people that he knew, and one of them from California came to visit CJ, and but he knew, and I knew him, and he was at the first meeting, or the meeting that I was with Ed Applewhite, and so suddenly it congealed, and we started the Synergetics Collaborative, and throughout that whole period, we focused mostly on Fuller's Synergetics activities and Synergetics book. But there was that comprehensive concept of bringing a community together that can share their ideas to get some insights and understanding of how nature works and how we have become. And so I've written a little part here that I thought that you might find that as a little bit of the way I see CJ, and it goes something like this. All are a part of the whole. As the metaphysical and physical come together, all forms begin to evolve. Time has been, time is now, and time will always be. All that we are is and will always be. We may take on many forms through time. However, we leave a history of self behind. CJ is a part of the whole and was in time before, and in time now, and will always be throughout time. CJ has transferred to a new form. His synergetic thoughts and guidance will be remembered throughout time. And that's the way that I see the comprehensive aspects and moralities that CJ is passing on to us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. Really appreciate that. That was wonderful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Joanne, followed by Doug, and then Andrea. Joanne.
Okay, yeah, hi. I of course know CJ through the Thinking Society. I didn't really attend the Comprehensive Wednesday meetups, but I will talk about what I learned from CJ. I mean, first of all, it's still hard to believe he's gone. I always pictured CJ. It's just I pictured him. Even more than other people. I pictured him at 95 years old, still doing this. I just really thought he would just keep going. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I know him through the Thinking Society, and I was, of course, immediately impressed by his intellect and just his originality of thought. He would always think through every issue on his own terms. I mean, everything. I mean, he would never. There was nothing I ever remembered him just sort of not having the time to think through and just sort of going along with the group thing just because he didn't have time to think it through. I mean, and I mean, I learned a lot from that, just to think every issue fresh, with your own ideas and your own principles. And he did that with everything. Like I said, I haven't really attended the Comprehensivity meetups, but I have an idea of some things that it means. I mean, I know that it involves an interdisciplinary approach, and I mean, CJ certainly did that. He was able to both discuss and teach people about such a variety of topics, from math to Dante to the future of the human race. I mean, the topics he covered and the variety of disciplines was really impressive. And of course, I always remember when he led meetups. He would have this microscopic writing. He wrote everything out by hand. And these notes that were so small, I mean, I would need a microscope to look at them, but he had them and he followed them. And it was just so impressive, the amount of work he put into it and how well he followed it. But I mean, probably most of all is how he did things interpersonally. He was one of the most patient people I know. He believed in giving everybody a voice, no matter how sort of inarticulate they may have seemed. He believed in giving everybody a voice and that everybody's opinion mattered. And he really believed in the process of dialogue. I mean, I think that was a big part of it. He really believed in the process of dialogue and how just through listening and discussing that you will understand more, and you'll really reach a higher ground. I mean, he really believed in the process of human dialogue and listening. And I think he was probably most devoted to that of anything. dialogue and inclusivity, including anyone, no matter how shy or, like I said, seemingly inarticulate they are. And he was a really patient person. He was such a cool customer, like in running the groups and dealing with people. And yeah, it's just like I said, I thought he would always. I thought he'd be here. I just sort of pictured him doing this on, and just doing this as a really old man. I'm sad he's not, and yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I wish I'd come to some of the math counts meetups and some of the non-thinking society stuff he did, because he did so much. And okay, I guess I'll leave it there. I will say I do remember his dedication to bicycling, and he and Jeannie on the two-person bicycle. And he would always, he told us that he and Jeannie went dancing once a week, and he was very devoted to doing that too. No, Tuesday night, that's the night I go dancing with Jeannie. Can't do it. Nope. And so yeah, I guess I'll leave it there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Just one point, it's like to know CJ is to know comprehensivity,
Yeah.
because his approach, kind of, he uses that all the time. Even, for example, the thing that you highlighted, how he interacted with people,
Mhm.
actually listen to everybody. And that's part of comprehensivity, because you're saying, look, each person is coming from an angle, and they are going to bring whatever they know. And I want to hear that in whatever form they bring. I want to
Oh
hear.
yeah, no,
And I not just want to hear that, but actually have a back and forth dialogue with that. So this collaboration and comprehensivity are tied at the hip for him. It's
I guess.
you cannot do comprehensivity without collaboration. You cannot do collaboration without comprehensivity. Thank you, Joe.
Sure. My
Next
pleasure.
up is going to be Doug. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see so many faces here, particularly Jeannie, and I want to try to bring a sort of a geometric structure to my perception of CJ. And there are three principles, and then a fourth appeared. One is kindness, which people have mentioned, and I think Jeannie's caring and incisive attendance to whatever was going on in the rooms they were in is sort of evidence of that. Curiosity is the next thing. He could bring, through his curiosity, wildly different people into a room and seduce them into behaving like human beings and talking to each other. And he did that through his very quiet and patient example, which people have mentioned. And the third thing was action, which Bucky says, I am a verb. Aristotle says a tragedy is an imitation of an action. And he was always acting on what he took in and what he saw. And I think the fourth thing is modeling. And what he did is and one of the first real lectures I heard him give was on modeling, but he really did model action. And the action was to be a local information gatherer and problem solver. So much to the point that he brought in people and tools and ideas to, I think, his idea or his instinct. He was a fellow traveler on many of my journeys, but then he was a fellow traveler on journeys with all of you, and he would turn. And that was a thing in Dante. I always tried to see the movement. Dante would say about Virgil, he turned, I followed. He was always turning, and I would follow, or he'd turn another direction. I wouldn't follow, but somebody else would. And then he was constantly doing these natural kind of movements through space that gathered people into his journeys and shared journeys. But he had incredible kindness, and to the point where I think for him, the Sermon on the Mount was spoken by every individual in the universe if they were approaching things comprehensively. That he saw that he really, I think, felt that everybody had to come together to solve the problem. And I think he somehow picked that up from Bucky. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Really appreciate that. And I remember the Dante meetups, and I remember, you know, how systematically he planned the Dante meetups. You know, all his essays on Dante, all his, you know, just showing you what what Dante was, and the extent to which he got people to really engage with Dante and with each other about Dante. Just amazing. Next up is going to be Andrea, followed by Amy. Andrea.
Yeah, so I have to refer to my little tiny written notes. So number one, CJ is still with us as far as I'm concerned, because he's the reason we're here. The second thing is, and I put this up as a note in the chat, CJ like knew how to hold his tongue. So a while ago, I did a thing on Buckminster Fuller with my group here in Tucson. And I posted the video of CJ talking to that amazingly annoying interviewer, and he held his tongue. And I thought, you know, talk about modeling behavior. Like, he never got annoyed. I mean, the interviewer was like so annoying, and he never got annoyed. It was so great. The third thing is that I honestly believe that CJ deposited secretly copies of The Design Way in numerous bookstores around the United States. And every time I see it, I totally bust a gut. So, I mean, he always makes me laugh. Let's see, measurement and its dependence on perspective. I think that was kind of like one of the last things that I saw that he did that was just fantastic. He talked about measuring a table and, you know, tools for measurement. He introduced me to Buckminster Fuller, and I'm in the middle of Critical Path, which is like Bucky would win an award for long sentences with more words than you could possibly fit, but fantastic stuff. And then somewhere, I did one presentation for GPTS, and CJ was nice enough to send me scanned pages of his little tiny notes. And I loved that. That was just, you know, like somebody said he was the last person they knew that used a pencil and like little tiny notes. And it was really helpful to me. And I do still have that somewhere, that scanned copy. So that's my contribution. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. One of the things about CJ is that he was so generous when he liked something, he would just, you know, he would champion it. So I remember I was interviewing him for his book at his place, and he held up this copy of this orange book 4 times. I said, wait a minute, what is that? Oh, that's The Design Way. And we ended up doing this entire series on Design Way with Harold Nelson. It was just amazing. Thank you. Next up is going to be Amy, followed by Judy. Amy.
This is kind of building on what Joseph and Maritza said about CJ building communities. My husband, Raymond Moberly, worked with Peter Meisen at the World Resources Simulation Center in San Diego. And CJ was instrumental in connecting Raymond's applied mathematical skills with Peter's work towards creating a visualization facility that shows the trends in global issues, the relationship between those issues, and the consequences of different strategies. And I learned from CJ that comprehensivity involves networking, knowing people's skills and connecting them to each other in a productive way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Next up is going to be Judy. Judy, go ahead.
Okay, great. This is a wonderful memorial to CJ, and I wanted to say that what he did to me was that he embodied andragogy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well. Andragogy, which is adult education and principles of learning. So he's like, to me, he's like a saint. Adult education and learning is my profession. I've done it for about 50 years. And I wanted to just state some of the principles that he embodied. Learning how to learn, critical thinking, building a third culture, theory and application, application and theory, systems approach to learning, adult development and mastery, learning from mistakes, dialoguing, synthesizing, collaborating, holistic learning, emotional learning, asking questions, learning through questioning, the importance of storytelling, and much more. To me, he confirmed that adult education was a real thing because he made it happen as a real person, besides the books and the experiences that I had with other people that were learning how to learn. But he already knew it and he embodied it. And he just was so thrilled to learn, so excited to learn, so fascinating to see him learning. It was quite a revealing. It was like to me, it's like before, literally before it changed the depth and breadth of my understanding of learning. So I say it as BCJ and ACJ, before CJ and after CJ. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity of learning from this grand maestro. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. You know, this adult education point is very deep because it's not just education, it is really life transforming. You know, CJ was like a child in terms of his curiosity about the world. His curiosity kept growing, and that's how it should be. It's he didn't think that that was an unusual thing. That's how human beings are meant to be. And then on the top of that childlike curiosity, you build the ability of systematically going through things, planning things, collaborating with many people, figuring out the techniques of drawing the best out of a whole variety of people. So the kind of learning, the kind of curiosity you can build as an adult, if you maintain the heart of a child and add all the capacities and the facilities that an adult can leverage, is mind-boggling. And that's what he actually demonstrated for us. Thank you for bringing up that. Give me just a second. We're going to go with Evanique next. Evanique, go ahead.
Yeah, I met CJ through the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society actually during the pandemic. So I only got a chance to meet him on Zoom. But I think the thing that struck me about CJ is his curiosity about so many different topics. You know, most of the time when I see people that are like interested in a subject like math, it's usually like contained to those like STEM, like math, science, and stuff. But he was interested in literature and music and, you know, all of these different things, art, like, and it was truly, you know, I would say comprehensivism, also a Renaissance person. Like, not only was he interested, he really like wanted to learn in-depth knowledge. And what it did is it inspired me to go deeper. It was like, you know, if you thought you were curious about something, really learn about it. And not just topics you know, but especially topics that you have no clue of. I remember a specific one where I had gotten on early for one of his meetups with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society, and he was asking me, you know, he was looking at the videos for the Design Way, and he was asking me about it. And I think at that point, I think I had given it up for like a couple of weeks because it was way over my head. And so I told him that. And one of the things he told me, which actually inspired me to go back to the meetups, is, you know, it just because it's over your head doesn't mean you can't learn anything. And so he was encouraging me to go back and just learn. And he was like, you don't have to get it all. Like, you don't have to understand it all. But, you know, if the only reason, he was like, if you're not interested, that's one thing. But if you are interested, just because it's going over your head and you don't understand it doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue to learn about it. And so I went back and it was a great book, and it's still over my head. But and I think the other thing is that CJ was curious about people, and he always was curious about what people were thinking, and he truly cared. It wasn't just like curiosity for curiosity's sake, or just he truly cared about what you thought. And the few times that I met CJ on Zoom, I always got that he cared about me, and it was just amazing. And I used to always be like, well, how does this guy care about me? He doesn't even know me. It didn't matter. That was CJ. It didn't matter. You were a human being and he wanted to know you. And I think that's the thing about him and comprehensivity, is that he lived it. And that's like one of the most inspiring things about CJ for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evanik. I want to tell us a little story to show that, it was not about just him exploring things. It was about him getting other people to explore things that would be interesting to them. So my favorite story of that is that he knew that Maritza was interested in other cultures, indigenous cultures. And he said, you know what? These Aborigines have a way of mapping without maps. And Maritza went and researched all of that and did a meetup on that. And so we were doing this meetup, and somebody from Australia shows up and he says, I've been working with the Aborigines for the past 20 years. And let me tell you. And so we basically handed over, Maritza did a little introduction, and then we just handed over this meetup to this person who had worked with Aborigines, who actually described in far greater detail how they navigate without a map, the method of doing that. Now, CJ did not attend the meetup. He was very disciplined about how he would spend his time, but he did see that video, and we got detailed comments about the video from CJ afterwards. So that's, he knew how to leverage the curiosity of other people to maximize the total throughput of comprehensivism for everybody. Next up is going to be Jyoti, followed by David. Jyoti.
Good evening, everyone. 12 years ago, I moved to Philadelphia city, and all the events and things that happened before that started to fade. But my introduction to CJ and Jeannie, from the time I met them before I moved to Philadelphia to this point, never faded. I remembered every single encounter I had with CJ. CJ met me in 2015 in the basement of the library, where we all used to gather informally and talk about some topics which were very uncommon. CJ and Jeannie were they were a little quiet on the side because we were sort of like spectators. And in his quiet manner, he connected with me. He would talk to me very little, but he would talk. And I would say, there is somebody I know here. So at least, there's a reason for me to keep going back there. And whole and behold, I moved in Philadelphia, and I see his name on this link, and I sent him an email, and he was so happy, and he said, yes, you should come to these events, Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. So everybody likes him, and everybody has said such beautiful, lovely things about him. But for me, he was very special. Because when I moved in the city, my life started to go down. It was spiraling down. And he encouraged me to come to these events, to these talks. And I said one time, CJ, I feel very guilty because you send these links, and when I open them, I don't understand them. They are so big, and those concepts and those terminologies that you use, and I don't know whether I should be coming here or not. And he said what you just said. One of you said, just come. I think it's with Joanne who said, just come. And even if you get a little bit of it, it's worth it. Well, that was a springboard for my attendance. And I said, okay. And then before I know, I started to pick up. I did. And I started to get very used to the people there. They were talking. I thought they were very intellectual. They were also very friendly. They actually cared for each other. And I was going through bad times, and that meant very special thing to me, that here are people who are warm. They go for lunches. They talk to each other. So that was my beginning of CJ. I learned a lot from CJ. We're talking about comprehensivity, but he himself was an example. It takes a village. And I learned so much from that. And it's like, even if you make a mistake, it is okay, because your mistake is going to teach you. That is a mistake. And storytelling. And he brought the topics of anthropology, philosophy, psychology. And I was just intrigued in one person, how flawlessly, effortlessly, he summates all these concepts. So nobody walks out from this place not understanding what was going on here. So slowly, I started to gel with the group, gel with his a lot of lectures, which I didn't understand the terms and what have you. So I really miss him. I have had a lot of losses after CJ. I lost CJ, but CJ's loss was very heavy loss for me. And like Joanne said, that he thought that he was at the age of 95, he will still be doing that. And I was one of them too. I said, how on earth can he just leave us? It's like we felt abandoned. We were his children. We were learning so much from him. He shows us how to be creative, how to question your mind and explore. So I will not say that too much about him, except that he was a very unique human being who cared and taught us. We were his students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. I want to build on one point. See, CJ's approach to knowledge was very different than most people's approach to knowledge. There are many people who know things, but they get proud of their knowledge and they don't want to talk to people who don't know. CJ's approach to knowledge was that he thought that knowledge is something that is actually good for people. And he worked very hard to communicate the most complex things to everybody and anybody at no matter what level. If they showed any desire whatsoever to know what he knew, he took the time to actually have a dialogue with them, go back and forth with them with infinite patience to communicate that. That's a very different approach, valuable approach to knowledge. Thank you. Next up is David. David, go ahead.
Hi, I don't feel I can do justice to this subject. I'm driving. I have no notes. We've talked about CJ before, and he really deserves a clear mind and a focus. But so if this is rambling, I apologize. But there's a lot of area to cover thinking about CJ, and I think a lot of people have said some wonderful things to honor him. I didn't hear, I got here so late, I haven't heard if anyone's talked about the math group that he formed, as well as the Thinking Society in Philadelphia, of course, to which he was a major linchpin. But the math group he took over from someone. It's one of these rare groups I think there may be 4 math groups in the entire world of Meetup. So it's very unusual for a city to host such a thing. But we were hosting this maybe 15 years ago, even in person. It would create a critical mass to discuss mathematics, which is sort of peculiar. Usually groups that are mentioning math are really doing physics or other things. And CJ kept us, you know, at the edge of our seats because, and no one's really been able to take over from what he was doing for this group. We're trying to maintain it, you know, partly in honor of what he built because it's so wonderful as a support for people interested. But we did within mathematics, first of all, Jeannie came as a completely equal partner, and she always came as the artist. And when we're doing anything remotely connected to geometry or representation, there she was bringing in a perspective you'd never get in a typical math group, right? So what does that say about comprehensivity? It says, yeah, you always want to bring experts in the nominal field that you're talking about, but you want to make sure that's not all you're bringing in because you're never going to hear the other sides of things. You're never going to, first of all, be tapped on the shoulder and be reminded you have to bring your child's mind in so that you have the full view of what the subject really comes from. And it's always so refreshing to have like, and here's a physical model of something you guys are talking about, like this incredibly intricate thing that Jeannie had put together, building, you know, a spatial object or a polygonal thing or polyhedral object. So yeah, of course, we're talking about things, and then this brings in the tactile and the visual and, you know, more emotional and sensible side of things. So that's the way this group worked. But CJ anchored it in things like papers by Euler, you know, original papers from the 1600s, and Descartes. So we're reading the masters. You never read this literature firsthand, no matter what you do. I went to math grad school. We never read any of this stuff. So you can imagine how rewarding it was to do this. And like I said, bring in an expert because, you know, when you want to get to the top of the point, the highest point to view this subject, but also come in when you're not an expert and you will be elevated by that experience. And you bring in views that other people aren't even prepared, haven't been expecting. So that's my little riff on the mathematics thing. And I really appreciate it because it's one of my favorite things. And it does speak to the way CJ looked, I think, at learning and how we inform each other and how a community creates a view of things that individuals themselves wouldn't have access to, and rooted in classics at the same time. So this went beyond mathematics because who knew we were going to do the entire Divine Comedy, of course, anchored with Italian literate people who are familiar with the works, who've done it 100 times, but that was not the voice of the group. There was also the group going through it themselves to make their own view of it, right? So those are my thoughts off the top of my head about the man we appreciate. Thanks for the chance to talk. Yeah.
Thank you, David. One of my favorite moments from the Dante group was there was this Italian lady who showed up, and you know, I was very curious. I said, "Can you read me some? You know, read us some of the Dante in original Italian to see what it sounds like." And she says, "Read? I can recite." And what do you want me to recite? You tell me. You know. So but see what this is, right? You produce something, and there is this exchange between somebody who has been living with that book for all her life, you know, up to a point where it is there in her head, and she can quote from it in response to various life situations. And she's sharing that with us. So that's what he brought together. All right. If anybody else wants to add anything, you're welcome to do that. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark. If I have missed anybody, or if anybody has not had a chance to comment, you can go ahead and do that. Go ahead and David, you had something. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I throw one more thing? And this is from the city of brotherly love, the Franklin city. And CJ, in certain ways, really models what Franklin did Franklin organize the first library, the first free library, because he was a publisher and he got other publishers to get involved. So he created this dynamic communal force, and he was self-educated. And he worked for his brother as a printer and always read books, that were being printed. So this self-education continued throughout his life, and he became, of course, a scientist and a researcher on his own, a constant search and study and love of learning. And we meet in his honor, in Philadelphia, and here's CJ kind of living the life. So makes a lot of sense that we had this sort of echo of Franklin with CJ in our lives. Very appreciative as a Philadelphian to bring that out. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Next up is Robert. Robert, go ahead.
I waited to last, well, not last, but till many of TJ's personal friends, I would guess, had a chance to speak, because I haven't and didn't have that pleasure. But listening to this, to me, had me thinking about a concert, because I don't know how many people are on this. There's more than a dozen, and probably close to 20, maybe, doesn't matter.
About 36.
36, a nice sized orchestra. Now, all of you people are playing in this orchestra. Each of you has a wonderful instrument, and you handle it well, and you had lots of experience playing it. But this subject that we're playing tonight is composed and directed by CJ. And the point that struck me is everyone that's spoken, and I assume others as well, have had enough experience with the concertmaster, the conductor, that they had when playing with him, full confidence in his ability to handle the piece to the most magnificent extreme. And hearing all this is just amazing. And I feel like I know TJ still not as a human being, but as I would a concertmaster if I were sitting in the audience and listening to the music.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. One thing that I'm very grateful for is my friend Joe introduced me to CJ. He was Joe started coming to my meetups, and he said, there is this one guy you absolutely need to meet. This was during COVID time, so you couldn't meet in person. And we just hit it off. And in the first conversation itself, I said, okay, CJ, so what is it that you are after? What do you want to do? He says, yeah, I'm writing a book. And then right then we said, okay, we are going to you're going to do meetups only on your book. So he just came up with this entire plan going across 2 years. And it was just like that. It's like, okay, I will send it to you. And like a couple days later, there is this entire plan of this is what I'm going to do, these 27 meetups. And then with tremendous discipline, he executed it. Each of them actually covers a very different field. But them together. So I am delighted that we have that we had, I think there was one more that he wanted to finish that he couldn't finish, but he finished like 95%. So we have all of that. We have the written material, his essays. So we have the chapters, we have the videos that he did on that. And I am just so grateful that we have all of that. And we're going to start with that as a base as we go into the next year. Next up is going to be Marilyn. Marilyn, go ahead.
I'm CJ's mother. And I've been listening to all the wonderful things that are said, but I'm going to stick with a totally different aspect because I think he went over my head at age, 8 or something. But no matter when I called him, he was never too busy to talk to me. And it was heartwarming, especially now after listening to all the people, or some of the people probably, that had contact with him. But he was always, I mean, I allowed him to be the talker all the time. I don't know how many things I said to him, but it really hit me how much he let me call, and he never said I got to get off. With listening to him, I knew he was busy, and that's all I really wanted to say.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for CJ.
Thank you, everyone.
Next up is going to be Joe, the sister of Jeannie. Go ahead, Joe.
I just want to say that when I first met CJ, he was a dance partner for Jeannie. So they would meet every week, folk dancing on the steps of the art center. And Jeannie and I as teenagers, used to hang out at that art center. But I think everybody who's seen the movie of Rocky has seen those stairs, incredible stairs. And so he was not just a thinker, he was also a doer. And that's very, talk about universal or comprehensive, going the full circle. And at night I sleep on a pillow that has a dancing shirt. The silk is so soft. But so he's multifaceted, not just a thinker. I wanted to say that. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. One thing that I remember is that, he knew where he was not strong, and he deliberately had plans. Like he said, literature, I don't think I understand. It's a very deep field, and I don't think I understand it as well as I should. So I have this multi-year plan of how I'm going to go through. Really, really appreciate that. Nick, go ahead.
Hello, this is my first time. I never met CJ, but just listening to everybody, I did pick up on two connections on his community and on his connectivity. And the one thing I'll say is the human intellectual endeavor is fundamentally a communal process. So there is a sense that his community not only is anchored in the here and the now, but extends back in the past. The idea of to view the creation as a whole is very ancient. You see it in the ancient world considerably, right? And so there is a long tradition of this idea of parts make up the whole, but the whole was never lost viewing the parts. So it just seems as if there was a tradition in that sense that he embodied. And when you look at the origin of the philosophy, it's like the love of wisdom. And people were saying like it's more than intellect. It seems like he embodied that love of wisdom. I would also state that there's a lot of talk in this somewhat philosophical, but like they're talking about relationality as like the ground of being, so it's ontological. And in this particular sense, then to draw connections between things actually could be almost a fundamental degree of even being itself. And so when you talk about his approach to people, how can I be a comprehensivist and not see the soul in front of me? For is that not part of the universe and the whole? Is that not part of being? And if I can't see that, and I can't see beauty, then I'm all the more poor.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate that. So folks, now I want to tell you about the book that we are going to be doing 27 meetups on. I put the link here and I'm going to share the screen. Let me see if I can, give me a second here. Hold on, there it is. Give me a second. Right, not here. Give me a second again here. 1, 2, yeah, there it is. Okay, All right. So, we have to figure out how to do the book. And I've chosen to take a very simple approach. I'm just, I think the right way to do the book is to let CJ just speak for himself. So there are these 26 essays that he has done. So we're just going to reproduce those essays in the book. That's it. And we're going to add one in the beginning, which is the introduction, which is from his website, Collaborating for Comprehensivity, which gives the entire vision, provides the entire vision. So that's all it is going to be. I might add a paragraph in the beginning explaining what we have done, and that's it. And just let CJ speak for himself because he does it so well. And we want that original voice to just shine through. Okay. And you can see here what this is. The introduction is what is comprehensivity, how it works, and why it works. So what we're going to do is this is going to take place on Wednesdays, first and third Wednesdays of each month, starting January 3rd. Each of them, except for the first one. The first one is the introductory. There is only the essay. There is no separate video for it. But for all the other ones, CJ has actually done a video where he has picked pieces of those essays, is presented that, and has had a conversation about it. So you can engage, especially for those who have not had a chance to go through this. This is really a treasure trove, and you can do it anytime you want because it's all available online. You can go to this Meetup page, the link that I've sent at any point, and you can see this whole thing. You can also go to the main website, which you can get to by clicking on this first link here, introduction, and all those links are there. So all the material is already there. For those of us who went through this entire series with CJ over the 2 years, this is an opportunity of going back and visiting the same themes, but now with all of the rest under our belt, we'll be able to see a lot more. So I expect the meetups to be spectacular. Look at just the topics: humanity's great traditions of inquiry and action, the necessity and impossibility of comprehensivism, the fundamental role of story in our lives, the comprehensive thinking of R. Buckminster Fuller, value of ethnosphere, the value of multiple working hypothesis, inductive attitude, a moral basis for science and comprehensivism, mystique in learning and in life, rethinking change and evolution, is Genesis ongoing? How to create that which is not yet, how to explore the future and why, redressing the crisis of ignorance, comprehensivism in the Islamic golden age, shifting perspectives and representing the truth, the whole shebang to understand all and to put everything together, chronophiles, data mining, your life for comprehensive thinking, Dante's Commedia and our comprehensivity, the ethics of learning from experience, comprehensive exploration, comprehension, and collaboration, tools for comprehensivity, ambiguity, contradiction, and paradox, articulating comprehensivity, the comprehensive design of our lives. What is comprehensive learning? The measurement of life, tools for comprehensivity, measuring beliefs, the standard for all measurements, our judgment, intellectual virtues for comprehensive practice. This is all in parallel. So think of this not as a sequence, but as a circle. And you can begin at any point that you are interested in and dive in. And it will, and then keep on exploring things in whatever order you choose. So please join us as we embark on this adventure. All right. Now, again, if you would like to make any concluding comments, you're welcome to do that. So I actually invite you to do that. Anything you want to say to close up? Go ahead, folks. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark. If you would like, if you want to comment or ask questions about the book series, in terms of the publication of the book, CJ was very big on making ideas accessible to everybody. So it's going to be a PDF that you can download anytime. It'll be completely free. It'll have Creative Commons license. We'll also work out some way of doing printing at just the cost, so that you can, people who like the printed copy and like to write in either big handwriting or tiny little handwriting can do so. That's very important. So we'll work on making that available. But the material is available right now. All the material that will be is available right now. So you can go to the website here and find out everything that you would like to find out. All right. So any comment on the book or on CJ? Let's go for that now. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark for any concluding remarks. We're going to start with Maritza. Maritza, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment because I got to hear all the wonderful comments since I went earlier on. Something about CJ that was ever surprising to me was how very intuitive he was. Also, like, you made the comment, he knew that I was interested in other indigenous cultures, but he knew that without us ever having actually had a conversation about it. So that was kind of cool. And I was always getting emails from him like, read this book. Oh, I think you would enjoy this. And so one of the last things that he actually sent me is one of my favorite lines. I've written it over in a bunch of different places. And it's just simple. He just said, whenever people get together to interact, magic can happen. And first of all, that's a very whimsical thing to hear someone that in general we think of as being so serious, right? But to me, it fits in beautifully. And it's two lines. He says, whenever people get together to interact, magic can happen. Whenever people get together with intention, magic does happen. So, yeah, I just wanted to put his words out there today.
Thank you, Maritza. In terms of the emails I received from CJ, one of the special emails that I remember is after he found out that he had, very short time to live. And the thing that really stunned me is that all his emails were about his book. It's saying, okay, how am I going to finish it? And he was even thinking and saying, look, there is one more thing that I would like to do. Let me postpone my treatment. I said, don't do that. But that's what it meant to him. That's what this work meant to him. That at that stage, he was just focused on, it reminds me of Isaac Asimov. Somebody told him, what if you knew that you're going to die in a week? What will you do? He says, I will type a little faster. So it's that passion for his work and for comprehensivity. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by Doug. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, just, thank you, Shrikant, for providing the platform and the partnership that made this happen. Without it, it doesn't happen. And thank you for going forward with the publishing the book. That means the world. I know to us at the Thinking Society and to everyone here this evening. Just in my closing, comments is that, I think one of the things that CJ did so well was we've spoken about his curiosity, but his ability to prioritize questions. And I really felt like when we even covered things like the idea of ignorance with Stuart Firestein, that, there was a humility in that pursuit to say that I don't know everything, and I need to learn more. And he extended that as far as that humility, and he turned it into kindness in how he interacted with everyone else. And that's how he created community. He didn't shove it down anybody's throat. He actually built communities. So I think that that's the most important thing to kind of recognize, is that we all come at, with different perspectives, and integrating those perspectives can lead to changing our views of the world.
Thank you, Joel. And Joel, thank you for introducing me to CJ. Thank you so much. I mean, in terms of humility, I always think of, when I think of CJ, it's like ambitious humility. It's like, he's tremendous humility, but he has this ambition of trying to understand everything, trying to bring everything together. So he has this odd combination, but when he speaks to people about things that he knows really inside out, he's thought a lot about it, the way he presents it to them, there is humility in that. He actually wants to hear, what do you have to say about it? And he's not just hearing it, he's actually processing it. He's actually questioning it. He's questioning his own views and trying to learn as best as he can from all the questions, no matter the level of that other person's knowledge. Next up is Doug. Folks, go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom if you like.
The only one, a lot of people talked about how they met CJ, and I kept trying to figure it out. And I went, was it 15 years ago? Was it 20 years ago? And, was it this group or this production of the play, or was it the Synergetics Collaborative, which initially had that strange name that Kirby referenced? And then I realized I met him at the Centennial for Bucky in 1995, and Kirby would remember this. And in the middle of this sort of thing that I had helped put together and was directing it, and kept telling Peter Meisen, you should create some loose joints here because somebody's going to want to disrupt this. And Peter later accused me of setting this up. But at some point, this very thin, passionate young man got up, threw a mushroom cloud of pink flyers into the air, and screamed that we don't have much time. This is not just talk. And then I talked to, and I was immediately drawn to him. Peter accused me of setting that up, which I didn't do at all, but unless CJ was channeling something from me and realizing, but he just and he was kind of shaking or fluttering or nervous about what he'd done, because he's not a man who's normally angry. And I didn't realize at the time, but then I realized he took all that passion and fused it into a much more patient method to do what he wanted to do. And I met him almost 30 years ago. And so I think this group is evidence of how he had that anger that kind of needed to be heard at that moment for a range of reasons I won't go into. But then he stepped back like Bucky and said, I don't think that's going to work in the long term. And he kind of created a whole another method and approach and patience and that gentleness that everybody talked about. So I just wanted to add that in, that he had, and that root of that, I think that's why he went dancing every week, or, that's why it's important to him, that sort of put it out in movement and joy rather than the anger that he initially had. So
thank you. Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment? Michelle, would you like to tell us about the link?
Yeah, sure. I just had been going through some old emails. I was inspired by some of the folks talking about how his words can, we can go back and read our old emails from him. And I was going back through and looking at some different emails and came across we had created, I think my sister did this, Brenda, Ever Loved, had, or maybe it was Jeannie, I don't remember. From when he passed away, had created like a memory album in there, and anyway, so I just thought I'd share in case anyone was interested in, you know, looking through some pictures and some things, that there's a timeline and such. Anyway, thank you all. It's so great, so nice to hear all of you talk so lovingly about CJ. We miss him. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Let's see. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks. First time I ever heard of CJ was a week ago when I saw the advertisement for this event. So hearing you all talk about him, wow, profound. So now that I've heard some things about him, here's what I'm curious about. So I'm curious if he developed some rules of thumb for maximizing the benefits of comprehensivity and minimizing the costs. So here's what I mean. Like about 10 minutes ago, I thought to myself, okay, what's the opposite of comprehensivity? And the first thought was parsimony. And then I thought, wait a minute, would everyone agree with that? No, they might say the opposite of comprehensivity is narrow-mindedness and myopia. Then I thought about it a little more, and I thought, okay, the purpose of comprehensivity is to avoid parsimony gone wrong. Parsimony gone wrong is narrow-mindedness and myopia. And the antidote to that is get more comprehensive, bring in more variables, you know, because you're missing something when you're being narrow-minded. Bring in more variables, get more comprehensive. But comprehensivity gone wrong is kitchen sink incoherence, where you brought in so many variables and you haven't made sense out of how they relate to each other, that it's like,
let me do one thing, Bill. Let me address it very quickly with you know, from this. So what I recommend is that you look at the section, the chapter number 3, which is on necessity and impossibilities of comprehensivism, where these issues are dealt with directly. Then the other one is the where is this? Let's see, what is comprehensive learning is a more general thing. There is tools for comprehensivity, where it deals with all these issues of what is it that can cause ambiguity, what is it that can do contradiction. Then he has a series on intellectual virtues, the virtues that are needed for comprehensivism. So all of them together do a very good job. And I look forward to your participation in the meetups next year. And you will get to, you know, just go through most of these things. All right. Thank you very much, Bill. Really appreciate that. You know, it's really great. And what we want to do is that we are going to have a lot of new people discover what CJ has done, you know, through this series that we are doing, through getting the book out, through, because this meetups, I mean, the way I'm, you know, I have a little bit of publishing background. So that what we are trying to do is that we are trying to play the book and the meetups going back and forth to create the synergy between the talk and the written word, in order to kind of get the ideas out there. And I invite everybody to share, you know, share what we are doing with friends, so we can actually build on this. All right, Jeannie, would you like to make any comments before we close? Sorry to put you in a spot, but I wanted to give you a chance to say something if you would like to.
Well, I didn't really plan anything else to say, but thank you so much for the people that came. And I miss CJ a lot. And thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. This was wonderful. And we look forward to having you join us to explore CJ's work all next year. We're going to be doing this twice a month, and we are going to hopefully build on it. And, you know, this is not the end. This is the beginning. You know, all of these ideas that CJ has put forth are like seeds. So please do not just consume the ideas. If you come up with something based on that, that's what the Comprehensivist Wednesdays are for. So if you have an idea of saying, okay, you know what, this CJ did this with it, but I would like to do more, please write to us, 52livingideas@gmail.com, 52livingideas@gmail.com, and we can figure out, you can talk about it, live or during the meetups, you can email me, but we always want to build on whatever has been done. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm glad that so much of CJ's family showed up. Really honored. And again, thank you very much. I'm sure, you guys have been a big part of CJ's life. So, we owe gratitude to you folks for that as well. So thank you very much. Bye, everybody. Good night.